History of 7 years in 30 minutes or so.
We'll
7 years of collaboration between ChemAxon and Evotec. Okay, so please, Ian.
So this talks about a bit more general. It's about how we've been using ChemAxon tools at Evotec over the past 7 years now. If anyone was at the US UGM, there are some similarities between this talk and the one I gave there. So I'm going to talk about these topics. So I'm going to talk a brief history of informatics at Evotec, where we've come from over the past 20 years or so. And then some case studies about registration, compound sourcing, project databases. You've already heard a bit about Excel, which again you've heard a bit about, and workflows. I'm not talking about, but I've obviously left it in this slide. So this is a nice little timeline of informatics at Evotec. Evotec was founded probably around 1992 as Oxford Asymmetry International. My colleagues will correct me when I get all the history wrong. In the UK, and Evotec AG or Evotec Systems or something or other in Germany built screening robots. Around the same time, actually, they were formed. But for the chemistry stuff, it's more interesting this way. Then, around 1999, we created, there are two applications. One was an ELN of some description, which was built for us using MDL type tools. I'm getting a no from Catherine over there, so that's obviously wrong. And CCD1 was MDL, that was MDL, okay. Around that sort of time. Then we merged with Evotec Biosystems, Biosystems AG in 2000, became Evotec. After that, we built a supplier database because we wanted to be able to browse supplier catalog information internally, so because we're doing it for our clients. We didn't want to do it on external sites because we didn't want them to know what we were searching for and things like that. It also linked into our ERP system at the time, our purchasing system, so that the chemists didn't have to deal with that because just general ERP systems are pretty horrible to use. CCD2, so CCD is our registration system for registering compounds. That was built outside again and built on top of the Daylight cartridge. And then we carried on using the Daylight cartridge for an ELN viewer to look at the chemistry within our ELN over here. And we also built ESMA and EVOseq, which was, ESMA was a sort of desktop tool for chemists for doing property calculations. It had a spreadsheet in there and things like that. So we like to think we've sort of did all the spreadsheeting stuff a long time ago. EVOseq was supposed to be our database, which contained everything. You know, biology, chemistry, analysis, AdMet stuff, everything in the world. Never quite did, to be honest, but it made a good attempt at least. Come 2003, 2004, Daylight decided that they wanted to up our bills for our annual fees by a considerable amount. So we went around and looked for other people. And that's when we found ChemAxon. So in 2003, 2004, we evaluated the ChemAxon tools and then started building our own applications on top of those. So the first was the ELN viewer. And then after that came the move from Daylight to ChemAxon with the ESMA and EVOseq tools. And then 2006, 2007, the decision was made to ditch the Daylight version of CCD2 and move over to the ChemAxon one there. We also built tools for accessing some papers and things like that. So this is Patent Fast Alert, which is a Thomson Reuters database that we brought in. And then we're also using things like Reaxys, and then coming forward, Instant JChem, now JChem for Excel, and the Contour ELN we have as well, and we're using the ChemAxon cartridge in the back of that. JChem for SharePoint is where we're starting, somewhere around here, probably in a month or so's time, whenever it's released. And the other big one here is EVOsource, which is a replacement for the ESD down here as a new version of our compound sourcing database. So we've been using ChemAxon now for since around 2003, 2004, so about 7 years. So I'm going to give a few insights as to why we chose ChemAxon and then some of the examples of those applications. So Daylight cartridge initially, it was costly, and we could only have around 30. We could only afford to have 35,000. You see, we're a poor CRO here. We could only have about 35 users of the registration system. They also stopped the UK daylight support, which was obviously a bit problematic. And we found that the JChem cartridge was doing quite a lot of the stuff that we wanted to do at the time. And, you know, it was good value for money. I think we were customer number 2, Alex, or number 3 or something. One of the early big customers, I think, a long time ago. So this is a quick slide as to why we continue to like ChemAxon. We use ChemAxon tools in pretty much all of our in-house applications and ones we purchase. We do tend to purchase software where we can use the ChemAxon tools where they're plugged in already, or it's available to plug in, so Contour-ELN and Reaxys. The good structure standardization tools, the support is excellent. So you know, if you want something fixed, they're pretty good at fixing it. And there are lots of other things down here that as to why we like staying with ChemAxon. Okay, so go on to the more interesting stuff. The registration system. So we call it CCD, which is our corporate compound database, or compound corporate database, depending on who you talk to, chemist or biologist or whoever. So the aim of this was to register every compound synthesized or dispatched to a client. But we have to enforce the exclusivity of those compounds. By exclusivity, we mean when we do a contract for a customer, we have to say, we will not make this compound for anyone else for X number of years, or forever, or for whatever. So we have to make sure that we do not send something out to another client that we've already made for somebody else, because that will get us into a lot of trouble with the other people. And this is the main aim of CCD, is to stop us doing that, as well as to keep track of all the compounds we're making. There is always problems having to migrate existing data, so the version we have at the moment is version 3. We've had CCD1, CCD2, which store data in completely different ways, so we had a process for migrating the data. Some of the other requirements, all chemists should have access, so it should be available to everybody. There should be a lot of security, so you can't see what someone else is making on a different project. And we have some business rules, and we want to be able to query it, obviously, and also set preferences for import and export and display, so you can see the data in the way that you want or the client wants to have their data sent to them. So here's some screenshots. And again, Catherine's going to tell me when I'm telling them wrong, but there's sort of the query screens, I think. No, preference screens? Preference screens of setting up how to do preferences, so you can build them on top of, for display purposes, you can build them on top of scaffolds and things like that, so you can say what orientation you want things to be, and then it will display everything according to that. You can query the database by lab book number, by any standard sort of fields, so notebook number, look on this screen, supplier reference, supplier, and things like that. If we're sending out a purchased compound, sometimes we do, any analytical data that's associated with it, and things like that. So we can store lots of bits of data and view it. And to give a quick summary of the tools we're using as part of that, I took the screenshot from the ChemAxon website. It's probably out of date, but still. But basically, we're using visualization, we're using Marvin, we're using lots of the calculator plugins, using Standardizer, the cartridge, and Reactor to do some simple enumeration processes. There are probably some more now, actually. I think Catherine's there. Okay, compound sourcing. As I said, we had the original system, the ESD, and this was replaced by the EVOsource system that we have now. You can search by structure, so we're using the Marvin plugin in the web page. You can have multiple search terms, single or combination of those. You can search for up to 50 structures at a time without it breaking the database too much. And I haven't updated that this time round, but the numbers now are around 15 million compounds, 130 suppliers and things like that, and about 46 million purchasable parts. So it's quite a big database, and the response is pretty good. Again, this is searching, so there's a structure you're searching for. You can do all the different types of substructure search available in the cartridge, but also search by supplier or molecular weight or CAS number or molecular formula and things like that. So actually the new molecular formula searching that's come in the new releases will be quite interesting to put in there. The results are presented in a grid-like structure. And just for speed purposes, we're only returning about 2,000 results at a time, because otherwise there's no, the scientists can get overwhelmed, and they should really be doing a better search if they want to find things more specifically. But it also includes all the names generated by ChemAxon tools, obviously, hazard data, and things like that. So you can refine, save, and export results as well. When you actually want to buy things, you can either get things from stores. So we have a link directly into our stores area, so you can actually get things from stores. You can return things to stores, and then you can also get quotes or buy directly from this interface. And this is the bit that they don't need to actually interact with the ERP system, because this does it all for them, which is great. For the techies amongst us, we're using the Java Persistence API to query the data, Marvin, Sketch, Marvin, View, Structure to Name, Instant JChem to do some of the loading, and standardization. So this is one of the challenges, and I think we showed this last year, and I think we showed it at every conference so far, but it's a really nice slide because it's showing what the problems are in loading supplier catalogues, and anyone who's got an internal system will have the same problem. So the first thing in the circle is contacting suppliers and getting the information. A lot of them say, oh yeah, we'll only give you an Excel spreadsheet, or we'll only give you a list, PDF of structures, which is a bit useless really. When we receive a catalogue, we have to decide whether it's a new catalogue or an update to an existing catalogue, so we can expire the old parts. We prepare the catalogues, converting to SD file if they're in Excel or anything else like that, check the structures, do the naming as required, load the catalogue data in, and then fix any errors. And then we also send those errors back to the suppliers so that they can fix their own catalogues, hopefully, so they're better next time. So whether any of them do, I don't know. But that's the kind of process, and it goes cyclically. So generally speaking, I would say it probably takes up maybe 0.4 of an FTE to do this whole process and keep it going. Unfortunately, at the moment, we have several pregnant chemists who get dumped into my group because they can't go in the lab. So that's a good job for them. Not that I'm allowed to write it into people's job descriptions that we should have a pregnant chemist on hand all the time, but it certainly helps with my resourcing of this process. So in that, we're using a good number of the parts within here. Okay, project databases. So this is where we're using IJC, and we've obviously mentioned IJC several times. So we're using IJC to store project information, and it'll be really good to have the graphing stuff in here in the new release, because at the moment we're using images for our graphs, so we can at least show those IC50 curves and things like that. And we're heavily using the forms, and as you can see, they're quite busy, so using some of the new features like tabs and things like that, I think we'll be able to tidy these forms up. But most of our projects now have a centralized IJC database, which is great. And as Catherine talked about yesterday, we're migrating our ISIS databases to IJC sometime this year. Most of the ISIS databases have biology data in it and are based in our Hamburg site, and biologists seem to love ISIS for some reason, and I'm going to have to convince them otherwise during this year. Again, as I think other people have mentioned, we have an internal version of the Kemble database. We also have some Lycepta data, which we're accessing through Kemble and other things. So this is a slide which Catherine probably showed yesterday, actually. No? Okay, that's all right. So this is moving from an ISIS for Excel spreadsheet to IJC. So the project was running for 8 months using this spreadsheet, and it contained over 600 structures and hadn't been well maintained, I would say. So what we decided was that an IJC database would be a good idea. So we migrated that across, created the IJC database, because they claimed they claim, and it is really, it's easy to set up, and it allowed us to have the structures in there, and the calculator plugins would calculate all the numbers quite easily or automatically when you added new rows, and it could be accessed by everyone at the same time, which you can't in an ISIS for Excel spreadsheet. So this is a really good solution and solved a real problem that the chemists were having on that project. again, the fun side with that we're using lots of things within IJC, so we're using things everywhere. So Excel, this has obviously been talked about quite a lot by Thomas and Karen, but we're using ISIS for Excel. ISIS for Excel, what am I talking about? JChem for Excel, slip of the tongue. Oh, dear. JChem for Excel, again within some projects, but to store some of the project data and do lots of calculations and things like that. And it's proving very. The chemists are liking it when it works. As you saw, there are some issues that we're having in Thomas's talk, and once we get those solved, I think then there'll be greater acceptance. There's a lot of acceptance already by the computer literate people, but there are more people saying if it did more things, it would be great. But enumeration within there is really neat, and we're using that to replace Cambridge Soft systems in our Tane site, as well as NIME and things like that to build up some enumeration things. One of the things people have been using is it for creating SAR tables. So they would do a search within their IJC, export the structures as an SD file, then load the SD file into JChem for Excel. So this is a subtle hint to Tim that exporting from IJC into JChem for Excel would save us a step. And then because of all the auto property calculation, the data search on the identifier means that we can reformat the table into the way that they want to see the SAR table. Then this can be exported out or sent to the client, and they will be able to see it, okay, with not active structures, but they'll be able to see the information that they want. Again, a nice thing that we're using Reactor quite a lot. We're using the cartridge, so accessing the cartridge through JChem for Excel, and all the calculators. So this is the concluding slide. So after 7 years, we've been paying annual maintenance for the past 6 years, and this year we decided that we like ChemAxon stuff so much that we've decided to buy perpetual licenses for it, because we have faith in what it's going to do. The fact that the customer bases are always expanding, it's nice to see people at GSK and everyone else buying into the ChemAxon stuff. It's good for us because it means there's more people to tell them what to do in terms of developments, but also good for ChemAxon because it means they'll grow some more. The support has always been great over the past 7 years, I guess. And they're helping us to deliver better value to our clients, basically, which is important. I wouldn't be able to justify spending any money on software if it didn't benefit us and our clients, basically. So, I think the bottom line is there's always a choice in what software you buy, but, once you've used some of the things, then, there are always possibilities to make things better for yourselves and your clients, things like that. Brilliant. Thank you. Any questions?
So you have a lot of external partners and clients, and yes. So you probably also have a lot of chances to do external data exchange with these people. Oh. Could you maybe comment a bit on how this works out for people who have or do not have JChem?
Okay, so people who do have JChem, then it's obviously easy, but those who don't, yes, we always have to keep 1 or 2 licenses of other software providers available to do that exchange. In general, though, we do try to use vendor-agnostic SD files and things like that to exchange data. I do have chemists who insist that they have to send ISIS for Excel files to their clients, but I don't see why. I don't see what advantage that has, and I'm trying to beat that out of them with a very large stick. It's not working all the time, and there's a lot of the biologists seem to be stuck with ISIS for some reason. I'm curious as to why that is. If anyone's got any solutions to how to get biologists off ISIS, I'd be welcome to that. A big stick again, was it? Yeah, okay. But generally speaking, yeah, we try and keep away from keep away from the sort of specific stuff and go for SD files or anything else like that to transfer data. We have asked Tim if we can have a big button in IJC that says create a local database for our central database so we can ship that out to people. And that's coming, apparently. Has been for 2 years. But so because that's if they've got a read-only copy of a database, then that's also good. And hopefully now SharePoint will start, once we start getting SharePoint out to people, we'll start to allow them access to view some of their data through SharePoint. So with JChem for SharePoint coming out, they'll be able to see the structures that we're working on at that time and things like that.